perspective that she's writing essentially sort of love letters filled with her wisdom and her experience. I'll let her share her story here in a few, God willing. But she's been married for a lot longer than 2.5 years. And she's learned from many mistakes and many real life experiences and many things that she did early on in her marriage. And I'm just really excited to hear from her because if you didn't, hi Michelle, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Sarah.
Hey, great! It's good to have you on. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for your
Perfect.
patience.
Of course.
I don't know how much you heard, but I was just sharing with our audience that Hey Beginner Wife is in my top three favorite Instagram accounts. There are so many. There's so many good. Obviously, there's a lot of bad, but there's so many good Instagram accounts from everything to what you should eat and how you should, dress modestly. And there's so many good things, especially for I consider myself a beginner wife. I've only been married for 2.5, almost 3 years, and so there's so many good things. But I love, love, love your Instagram account, and so it's such an honor to have you here with us on the show
Aw,
today. And I'll
thank
let you.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started Hey Beginner Wife and how you got it to what inspired you to get it going?
Sure. And I apologize. I did not hear what you said at the beginning. So Steve and I have 6 children, and they're all grown.
Mm.
And they left the house. And actually, at one point, we had 5 of them living in another state, all in a centralized
Oh wow.
location. And they all went to the same church. And people started saying, what's the secret with you guys? What, like, we want to meet your parents or something. And that was really fun to hear. But what was more exciting to me was that these grown kids were saying, your parents we want to sit down and listen to what they have to say. We just want to pick their
Mm.
brain. We want to hear from your family. So
Yeah.
my kids said, Mom, you should do an Instagram account. And that was like it just really sounded like a crazy idea that anyone would care. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought I would love to share advice on being married, because that's my passion.
Mm.
And the kids thought I should really do an account on parenting. And
Mm.
I thought about it and I said, no, you know what? Marriage is the center of the family, and I want to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So I just started in February of 2020. It was 1 month before COVID.
Mm.
And I really tried to remember some stories I could share that would be helpful. So
Yeah.
I started that way, played around with it, tried to figure out did video speak to people, who was my audience. And just through trial and error, I put my account together.
Yeah. I mean, that's what a I didn't say much because I didn't really know how it all sort of began. I've only been following for maybe the better half of or the better part of this year. And that's what a testament. If my we've only been married, like I said, for 2.5 years, but our son is a year and a half. And
Aw.
man, if he grows up someday and someone says, "I got to meet your mom and dad and figure out what it is that they've done," and it's so true. Children are such a reflection of their parents. Obviously, they spend more time with you than anybody else, and what a great testimony and a compliment and a great grace to
Well,
have.
thank you. Okay, if you
Yeah.
didn't share, and maybe you don't know, we've been married 38 years.
Oh wow.
Um, we had our first little boy. He was born like 14 months after we were married.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had 6 children in 9 years. They're
Oh
all pretty
wow.
much a year and a half apart. We have 3 boys and 3 girls.
Oh.
4 of them are married, and 2 of them are not yet.
Mm.
And we are expecting our 5th grandchild in September.
Oh
So
wow.
it's our house has or our family has just grown older and been through a lot with
Mm.
just life, just raising kids and just being married. So yeah,
Wow.
I am not a marriage counselor, but
Yeah.
I have been interested in marriage and passionate about the idea of marriage since I was in junior high.
Mm.
Um, Listening to interviews on the radio, reading books, observing people.
Mm.
So I've never lost that, and I love talking about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like a call, when you're that young, and how many kids in middle school are like, I'm really interested in
Oh
marriage.
gosh, like none.
Well, more and more, I feel like people are kind of returning to some traditions. And so I hear more and more young women are becoming more marriage minded. But how neat is it that the Lord has placed that on your heart to have a passion and interest for marriage and its importance, its incredible importance. That's how families are made, right? That's how,
Right.
it's the cell, the building block of society. And you could work on Wall Street, or you could be, a hot dog vendor. At the end of the day, everybody supposed to come from a family. And so the importance of it is understated. So we're going to take a break here in just a minute. But before we do, I just want to say what do you consider, or I want to ask, what do you consider to be a beginner wife? Because there are a certain amount of years.
Nope, not years at all. Just,
Okay.
I think women that are shocked that marriage is not what they thought it would be, and they
Mm-hmm.
realize I'm not prepared for this. And
Yes. Yes.
where's the class? Where's someone telling me what to do?
That's
Where's
right.
some encouragement? I'm drowning. I think if that's where you're at, you're a beginner wife.
Hey, that's a really
Um,
good point. I think that we're going to take a break here in just a second, but yes, marriage is not exactly what I expected it to be. That will be the perfect intro for me when we come back from this short break. There are so many questions I have and so many things I can't wait to dig in and ask about. So we have Michelle from Hey Beginner Wife on the air. We will be right back.
Arm yourself for the daily spiritual battle. Visit St. Michael's Armory for beautiful sacramentals, recast antique metals and religious jewelry, and our exclusive sterling silver and wool brown scapulars. Take up these means to strengthen your soul and arm yourself well for the battle of life. stmichaelsarmory.com. That's stmichaelsarmory.com. Spiritual armor for the battle of life.
Hey y'all, I'm your Monday, Thursday host of The Quest, Sarah Soto, and I wanted to invite you to send us an email with any of your questions about annulment. Is it Catholic divorce? I'm going to have a special guest, Father Raymond Pendleton, on Monday, July 29th, and we're going to answer all your annulment-related questions. Don't hold back, folks. Shoot us an email with what you got at thequest@grnonline.com. Feel free to call us during the show as well. We'll be live Monday, July 29th with Father Raymond Pendleton on The Quest, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern.
This is The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Share the show with a friend. You can find us on social media. Want to listen again? We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Quest. I am your host, Sarah Soto. I'm with you on Mondays and Thursdays, and I have a very special guest I'm so excited to have on, and the devil tried to take us down and interfere with the technology, but not today. Not today, Lord. I have Michelle from Hey Beginner Wife here spending some time with us, and I'm very excited about that because, well, as it turns out, she's had a passion for marriage for most of her life. She's married 38 years, mother of 6 children, and it was their friends from their church community that were like, we got to meet your parents and figure out how you guys turned out so great. That inspired her just before the pandemic to start her Instagram account, which you can find if you type it in on Instagram. You can probably just Google Hey Beginner Wife all together. And just before the break, Michelle was sharing, I was thinking on a timeline, right? A beginner wife is someone who's been married for a month, for a year, but she was saying anyone who's wondering how am I supposed to do married life? Where's the class? That's who it's sort of like, Michelle, do you think it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just me because I'm a big fan and a follower, but is it like letters? It's letters to wives who are struggling to understand what the call to marriage is?
You mean my Instagram account? Is it like letters?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You could think of it that way. Instagram's very unique in terms of how you approach it. It really is nuggets of information where I'm trying to take a practical tip and figure out how I can share it so that women understand it in, 1,500 words or less.
Yeah.
So there's no rhyme or reason to what I'm going to post one day to the next. It's just something that I think is helpful. And sometimes I repeat a topic. There's some topics I bring up over and over because I think they're foundational to marriage.
Right.
And I do really try to give examples from my own marriage because I learn through examples, and I think women really appreciate that. So
Yes.
that's another thing I try to intersperse in there besides just, I don't want it to be textbook knowledge because that's not going to make sense. You want to know how to apply it to your situation. So
Yes,
that's what I'm
definitely.
trying to do.
Yeah, that's great. They feel like love letters to me because I mean the
Aw.
thing is that like my parents are divorced, and so
Hmm.
unless people are sitting out there that have these model parents or close to it, like a loving mother and a loving father who are committed to each other for their entire life, who are going to prioritize their marriage and raise their children right, according to the commandments that the Lord has given us. Like, if you don't have that, marriage can be even more of a surprise when you get married. And
Right.
I mean, if you have those, yeah, like I said, unless you're growing up with near perfect parents, and even if you do, yes, marriage was a big surprise for me too, and that's because I considered myself pretty wise and pretty well read and educated, and when it comes to the teachings in the church and biblically what marriage is, and man, was I in for a real shock. So I kind of want to, like you said, you use your marriage to your husband Steve a lot and give practical examples, which I need and love, but I have to ask, was marriage a big surprise to you when you and Steve got married 38 years ago?
No, actually, we got married young, and we really fit together really, really well. I think what was the biggest surprise to me came years later, because like you, I had read a lot and I thought I knew what I was doing, and so I hit the ground running, assuming that I knew what I was doing. I knew how to communicate. I knew what was best for us, honestly, is what I thought. And it wasn't until years later, I actually heard a radio program, and the two men were talking about respect and what respect meant to men and what it looked like in a marriage. And they described an argument, and they said, when a man and a woman are arguing, a lot of times what happens is the woman turns into using a disrespectful tone or look or words. And her husband is so shocked that the woman he loves is speaking to her this way that he shuts down. He can't get over that no one at work would talk to him this way, but somehow this woman that he loves and has committed his life to is speaking to him disrespectfully. And so he doesn't respond. And honestly, Sarah, my husband did this. I just thought he was not a good communicator. When he shut down, I thought, do you not have what it takes to keep going? I mean, I could have talked till midnight, right? And finally he would just say, we're not doing this anymore. I'm going to leave. We'll pick this up tomorrow. And when he walked out of the room, I thought, well, clearly I'm a better communicator than he is. But in this interview, the man said, and he described my husband perfectly. He says, in an instant of a moment of conflict, he is going to start to shut down, and then he is going to say, I'm done. We're not doing this anymore. And he'll walk out. And I was in the car driving because it was a radio program, and I pulled over to listen. I thought, how does this man know what's going on in my life? And it turned out that it was a teaching I had never heard, and that was that men are wired for respect, a base level respect.
Yeah.
And I had to learn what that looked like. And that's what threw me into a tailspin. And we had already been married 15 years when I heard that. And I began to look back at everything I had done, how I had handled conflict with him. And I realized the areas that I was disrespectful. And I became a student of that. It was so challenging to me. I mean, I did ask my husband, did that sound disrespectful to you? And he was kind enough to say, yeah, a little bit, honey.
Oh, wow.
And the book I read was called Love and Respect. It actually wasn't called that then. The first time it came out, it was called How to Motivate Your Man God's Way, which I thought was a funny title. But the author even said, that's what women were saying. I just can't motivate my husband to do what I want him to do.
Gotcha.
But the book has since been revised and renamed. But I had to read that book 2 times and really ponder it and learn it. And I would qualify myself a beginner wife when I finally came to the realization that all these years I had kind of not seen my husband for who he was and what he needed.
Yeah.
And everything changed then, and really felt like a happier marriage for both of us. His whole demeanor changed. He just was happier.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, 15 years of shutting down when that, like you said, that baseline communication of respect. I mean, I can't tell you, I've had my own husband tell me, people out at work, people in the street, even friends could tell me something and I wouldn't bat an eyelash, but you say it to me, and it's because of who you are in my life. And because he's laid his very life down for me at the altar, right? And he continues to do that every day for our family. And it hurts so much more, right? And it stings in such a significant way because I'm the one person in the world that should always speak to him with respect and kindness. And now, in the world that we live in now, certainly you and I talking about the importance of needing to respect our husbands. Some people might come after us with some pitchforks, if you know what I mean. but if men require that baseline respect, it's not to say that women don't need to be respected. We just have different needs. We are different, despite what the world tries to tell you.
Good point, because women do come back and say respect is important for me too. So in no way are we saying that we don't value respect.
Right, absolutely.
Something that really helped me, Sarah, was to realize that when we treat our husbands as if they are our son, as if they are, as if we're the mom, and they need our correction, they need our reminders, that's disrespectful. So it's been really helpful for me to ask, did I just sound like his mother when I said that? When I correct him or criticize him, oftentimes that is disrespectful because I'm not giving him the courtesy of believing he can do it without my help.
Right.
So those 2 things, I'm impressed that your husband was able to articulate it to you in that way. Because what I've heard often is that men don't realize that we don't know this, and they think we're doing it on purpose.
Oh,
so
gosh. It makes it worse.
I know it does. And I know when my husband was younger, he just said, honey, your tone, it's your tone. And I didn't know what he meant by that.
And
I don't think he was able to pull it out.
It's how you say it.
Yeah. But I was saying it fine. I wasn't saying it poorly.
Yeah.
It was just challenging him and second guessing him.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that wanting to criticize, wanting to control, wanting to compare them to how great your dad was, and wanting to change them, right? Like even something as simple as, I really don't like the way that you wear, or these shorts that you wear. You should be wearing these shorts. Acting as if all the time before he met you, he was wearing socks as pants. And then finally you showed up one day and you were able to say, no, these are the shorts. Oh, thank God you're here. Now I can dress right. And
right.
I make the joke all the time. I will admit it here on we're in several states, or a very national kind of a vibe here. I will say it. I am a terrible backseat driver. And my husband is 6 years older than I am. So he's been licensed to drive for much longer than I have. And yet I still feel the need to, do you see the car? Do you see the car over there? There's a car, which is totally not me trying actively to be disrespectful, but it's disrespectful. It's like he can't do it, and I have to do it for him because I'm treating him like a child. And men don't want to be, nobody wants to be treated, no adult wants to be treated like they're an incapable child. I don't even know that I would talk to my son that way, which is so bad. But yeah, I mean, it's there's so many. You said something. You had a post on your Instagram just the other day that really resonated with me, and I'm gonna have to pull it up here in a second. But when you say, I love that you're saying beginner wives, or you were kind of at the school of beginner wifing 15 years into your marriage, where you had to reassess everything and take a look.
Right.
Then that's really, it's very humbling to hear, as someone who is truly only been married for a couple of years, to hear someone who can admit, right? Because you could be 15 years in and say, well, this is me, and this is how it's going to be, and this is as good as it gets, and take what you can get. You're locked in, and, and that's it. But to say, hey, I've got to take a really serious interior look at what's going on with me and where it's coming from, I think is very beautiful and courageous. And I think it's a very, it speaks volumes about the kind of faithful Christian that you are. And I hope that those listening will check out Michelle's Instagram. It's at Hey Beginner Wife, all together like that. Hey Beginner Wife. And you don't have to be a truly newly married wife to benefit from all of the fantastic advice. So I think of Michelle as like an Instagram mom, giving me good advice, writing little love notes, the way my mom used to put Post-its on the mirror when I was getting ready for school. But she said, yes, I mean, it's for those who are just tuning in. Michelle's Instagram, Hey Beginner Wife, has little nuggets of information with very practical advice, lessons that she's learned herself, right? So she's not like on this big soapbox telling everybody what to do. It's real things that she's been through in her marriage of 38 years, being a parent for so long of 6 children. And I think it's out of love. It feels like it's out of love that you want other people to.
Oh, yes.
To enjoy the happiness and the joy. The Lord created marriage for joy. It's not to be miserable. And so when we get back after a short break, I'm going to ask Michelle about some of her favorite pieces of advice, and I'll ask her about a couple of recent Instagram posts that she's made. So if you just tuned in, or if you have been listening, just a reminder, we have Michelle live with us from Hey Beginner Wife. You can check out her Instagram, Hey Beginner Wife. I'm your Monday, Thursday host, Sarah Soto, a Catholic wife, mom, and speaker. Again, for more information, you can visit my website at sarahsotospeaks.com. We can't take any calls today, but you can always email us at thequest@grnonline.com if you have any questions. We'll be right back after a short break.
The month of July is dedicated to the precious blood. O precious blood of Jesus, infinite price paid for the redemption of sinful mankind. O divine blood, drink and laver of souls, standing between us and the Father pleading mercy. With all my heart I adore you, sweet Lord, and offer reparation for the insults, outrages, and ingratitude which you continuously receive from human beings, especially those who dare to blaspheme the divine blood you shed for us. Bless this blood of infinite value. Bless the fire of Jesus' love, who shed it to the last drop for us. Where would I be if not for this divine blood that redeemed me? Indeed, Lord, I have drawn it from you to the last drop. What love! Thank you for this saving balm. May every heart, every tongue, now and forever, praise and thank this priceless balm, this saving blood, this fountain of crimson mercy welling up from the fountain of infinite love. Amen.
This is a Messy Family Minute with Mike and Alicia Hernan. Many parents are greatly concerned about the way that secular culture influences their children. But what's a parent to do? It's impossible for us to isolate our children from all outside influences. To inoculate their children against secular culture, Catholic parents need to create a family culture that is more dynamic and appealing than the culture that the world offers.
Family culture is the unspoken system that binds your family together and communicates expectations, beliefs, and values more powerfully than any written word. It forms the way of life for your family. Parents need to be thoughtful and intentional about the culture they are stewarding within their home, because those messages are being heard by all of your children all of the time.
A strong, positive family culture is is the secret weapon of Catholic parents because it will help children to recognize that the culture of the world is shallow and unsatisfying. For a free download on how to develop your own family culture, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
You're listening to The Quest, a pilgrimage of faith. Have a question or something to share? Call the show live at 877-757-9424.
Hey y'all, it's so good to be with you on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. It's beautiful here in Texas, but it kind of always is. I'm so excited and so grateful that Michelle from Hey Beginner Wife, that's Hey Beginner Wife on Instagram, has joined us today. Now, before we get into some of your favorite pieces of advice for beginner wives, which again, you can be a beginner wife 20 years into your marriage. What is the, I want to share, you shared a post the other day, Michelle, that said, it was advice to consider before you criticize your husband. And there were a few things to consider. You had a little video on there. Do you remember? I can pull it up.
Yeah, I believe it was before you speak, there's 3 things to think about. Does it really need to be said?
Mm-hmm.
Does it need to be said now? And does it need to be said by me? And all of those questions are excellent to ask before, usually I think it's before you want to confront your husband about something. Some things can be dropped. We don't have to bring up every little thing. So does it need to be said? A lot of times, no, it really doesn't. If we can train ourselves to not be emotional and just have knee-jerk reactions and pause. So I would say that. Does it need to be said now? That would be a trick for me because it feels so much better to speak and get it off my chest. But sometimes now is not the right time. And does it need to be said by me? And what I've learned over the years with my husband is many, many times he is not going to hear it if it comes from me. If I take a step back and I just pray for him and say, Lord, would you please speak to him? And I like to say, and tell him that we need to do this, because I'll tell God how I think we need to run things. But really, it's, and then I wait for God's timing. I have discovered that if he hears it from a friend, or he hears it in church, or he hears it something he read, he'll come and go, oh, I had this great idea. And I'll think, okay, I'm pretty sure I've brought that up 3 times and you've never heard it. So for whatever reason, sometimes the answer is no, it doesn't need to be said by me. Yeah. I need to wait for God's timing to bring it up and trust that he'll hear it when it's time for him to hear it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, you're not your husband's mother. I'm not my husband's
Correct.
mother.
There you go.
It's so funny. I mean, like, obviously I know that, but do I really know it? You know, I mean, do I really live it? And so, I have never regretted, I mean, like I said, we haven't been married very long, but I've never regretted taking that pause and thinking, do I need to say this right now? And then, you know, I don't implode. You feel like you're going to implode, right? If you don't get it, I got to say it. This one particular thing is doing this one, it's just, or whatever it is, right? I got to get it out. It's like bursting, especially like a talker like me. It's got to come out.
Yes.
But every single time that I've said, that's probably not going to go over well, or it's probably not going to feel good to hear that, or whatever it is, that pause, I've never been like, I should have said that. And in fact, more than anything, I've been like, thank you, Lord, for helping me get custody over my tongue.
Yes.
It was the right thing to do, and I'm so grateful for your grace. And so that's one of your very recent posts. I could probably read them all over and over and over again, but it's really, really, really helpful. I think that is one of the most disrespectful things we can do to our husbands is criticize them and tell them how they're doing everything wrong and how you know how to do it better, right? Which is so silly because my husband's been around longer than I have. He obviously knows more than I do. You know, and it's not to say I'm not smart, right? It's not to say that I don't have valuable input. It's none of those things. It's just that he's the leader of our family, you know?
Right.
And he needs to be treated as such because he certainly treats me like a princess, or he always corrects me. He says like a queen. He treats me so well. There's nothing he wouldn't do. I mean, he is, and he's so like, he has such a tender heart for me. If I express a need, or like if I express like a desire that I have, and he can make it happen, he does every time, every single time. So he's living up to his role above and beyond. And then here I am going like, is this the way you want to do this? I have to tell you, it's right in front of your face. How many times do I have to tell you where it is? And that's how we sound, ladies. I just want you to know. I know it doesn't feel like it, but
Yes.
so if we're not talking, and like I said, I'm glad you offered that, hey, beginner wife, or a beginner wife can be anybody who's looking around. What do I do here? My marriage, there's something, I got to correct something. I got to look into something. What are some of you can tell me your 5 favorite pieces of advice, or you can give me some highlights, or what are the 5 biggest lessons that you've learned in your marriage? Because like you said, you're always sharing wonderful examples from your marriage to Steve. But if you could only give 5, if you could only have 5 posts on Instagram, what would they be about, or what kind of advice would they be for beginner wives?
Yeah. Well, respect is one of my top pieces of advice, and I do return to that often. And we covered that before the break, just how important it is to respect our husbands and treat them like like we did when we were dating, like he's my boyfriend, not like I'm his mother.
Right.
So that would be for sure a piece of advice I would give to a beginner wife. Secondly, I would say, think about being kind. I think if we return to that, am I being kind right now? When we live with someone, we give ourselves permission to relax and think that we can let it all let our hair down. But this is the person that we love. We should not treat them as if they're not important. And I think sometimes we just forget to be kind to the people at home. Yes. And part of being kind, in my mind, is believing the best about them. Rather than immediately jump to a conclusion that they did something to hurt us, or that there was whatever it might be. Let's say they're late. We're going to jump to the conclusion that if they would only have been considerate, they would have called us. He's so inconsiderate, and we allow ourselves to camp out in believing the worst of his intentions, only to discover when he gets home and explains what happened that we were wrong. Yeah. So my other piece of advice would be, believe the best about him. Give him the benefit of the doubt. And that takes a lot of self-control, because if he's late and you start to feel like, to assign motives to why he might be late or fault, then you've got to backtrack when he gets home. So it's to your benefit to believe the best, because then you don't have to pull yourself up out of the pit you actually dug for yourself. And you discover what the truth is. And that's actually from 1 Corinthians, when Paul talks about what love is. Love is patient, love is kind, and there's these, I don't know how many attributes. But one of the final attributes that describes love is love believes the best about someone else. So I've really grasped that, and I cling to that as a foundational question. Are you believing the best about him, and how can you practice believing the best? I think that's really helpful in our attitude toward him. And right along with that, but I'm going to give it a separate piece, its own number, is being really careful to consider what your inner dialogue is. I know for me, my mind is always racing. And along those lines, I can have accusation after accusation toward my husband. Now, it doesn't feel like that. I really like him. I don't walk around thinking these things. But if I walk into the kitchen and there's a coffee mug on the counter, I can immediately go, oh my gosh, why didn't he just put it in the dishwasher? Or if I get in the car and I asked him to return a library book and it's still sitting there, I can think, why doesn't he ever do it? I should have done it myself. Do you hear what I'm saying in terms of allowing our inner dialogue to run wild?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I honestly don't think a lot of women take the time to address that in their own lives and to make it a matter of self-discipline, to take their thoughts captive. That actually is something that Paul talked about in the Bible. He says, I take my thoughts captive. And he, like, as if you're putting them in a prison, and say, you know what? Nope, not today. I'm not listening to you today. Yeah. So I encourage women to become aware of their thoughts and what they're allowing themselves to dwell on all day, because that is setting the tone for how they're going to respond to their husband when they see him later in the day, based on all the things they've been dwelling on all day long.
Yeah. You know, that's, and I mean this in the best way possible. That feels like a little dagger to my heart. Because it does require self-discipline. It does require work. It does require practice. I was just having a conversation literally, just hours ago, where I took all this time and I prepared a meal for our son, and we tried to feed him really healthy. So there's like all this cooking all the time involved. And even though he's a year and a half, he eats pretty well. And every now and then he'll be a little disinterested. And obviously it's a bit frustrating, right, to have worked so hard to prepare something so healthy and have someone who's like, I don't want this. But he started eating, and I didn't even realize, I didn't even recognize that until after the fact. I started to think, okay, I need help here. I didn't grab any baby wipes. I didn't grab any napkins. I didn't grab this or that, I left this over there, and he's eating beef, and I don't want him to choke, so I don't want to leave. And my husband works from home. I don't want to take advantage. He's going to be disappointed in you. He's going to be disappointed in you, and he's going to be upset with you if you call him away from his work just to help with one thing. And so this like racing dialogue, assuming that my husband was going to be annoyed or upset or disappointed in me. And I don't think he's probably annoyed with me sometimes, but he's never been disappointed in me when I came to him and allowed myself to be vulnerable and say, like, I really need help in this situation. He wants to come to my rescue. The other day I was like, I can't open this pickle jar. You've never seen the man move so fast to come in and help. He wants to be my hero. And so to have put all this sort of false, idea that he was going to be disappointed. And then I realized it. I said, hey, I'm getting a little flustered here. I'm talking to you in a not so nice tone. I need to think about I don't know what's upsetting me. Let me think about it for a second. So I thought about it, and I said, I was really worried that you were going to be let down, with me, because I am a stay-at-home wife and mother, and this is my domain, and I'm supposed to be caring for him. And I was overwhelmed that I needed your help. And I thought you were going to come out here and say, hey, you're not cutting it, kid. What are you doing? I'm supposed to be working. And not only has he never spoken to me like that, but he doesn't think that way. He was happy to help. He was free for the moment, and he stepped out. And I just think that's probably, for me personally, the respect thing, like, I get it. I so get it. But the having custody over my thoughts, right, and being aware of how it's firing me up to when I meet him face to face, that I'm just like kind of slamming him right off the bat, because I've had this whole conversation unnecessarily in my head. That's probably some of my favorite things that you address. So we're gonna take our last break here in just a minute. But for those of you who are just tuning in and wondering, who's this amazing woman who is so wise? I'm interviewing Michelle from Hey Beginner Wife. You can find her on Instagram at Hey Beginner Wife, all one word, all together. It's 3 words, but it's all together. And Michelle and her husband, Steve, have been married for 38 years? Is that what you said?
Right, 38.
38 years. And they have 6 children, and she loves marriage. She's very passionate about helping women in their marriages when they feel like they don't know what to do or where to go, and how to align things properly according to what biblical marriage should be. And so I'm so grateful for Michelle to be on. We have our last segment here in just a second. But again, you can find her at Hey Beginner Wife, all together, on Instagram. She's got some incredible nuggets of advice for how to have a fruitful and a happy, a joyful marriage as the Lord desires you to. We'll be back after a short break. You can always listen at grnonline.com or the Guadalupe Radio Network app. We'll be right back.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for July 25th. Today we celebrate St. James the Apostle. Today's saint and his brother John were called by Jesus as they worked in their father's fishing boat on the Sea of Galilee. James the Greater, as he is sometimes called, was among Jesus' closest friends. With his brother and Peter, James was privileged to witness the transfiguration, the raising to life of the daughter of Jairus, and the agony in Gethsemane. The Gospels tell us something of the temperament of these brothers. In one incident, both James and John, or their mother, depending on which gospel you're reading, asked if they could have the seats of honor in the kingdom. Jesus assured them that such an honor was not his to give, but belonged to his heavenly Father. Another time, when a Samaritan village did not give Jesus a grand welcome, James and John were ready to call down fire from heaven to destroy it. Jesus' nickname for them, Sons of Thunder, hints at their great zeal, if not their lively tempers. Apparently the first of the apostles to be martyred, James' death is recorded in Acts of the Apostles. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
This is The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Share the show with a friend. You can find us on social media. Want to listen again? We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Quest, where we are on a pilgrimage of faith altogether. This is not our home. We're not meant for this. And so there's a lot of things to learn on this pilgrimage as we try to grow in relationship with the Most Holy Trinity, as we try to become saints that the Lord has called us to be, as we try to grow in holiness, especially those of us who are called to marriage. Boy, oh boy. There is a manual that teaches us what we need to know, and that's sacred scripture. But I will tell you this. I was familiar with what sacred scripture says about love and about marriage and what the Lord taught about marriage and in his earthly ministry. But boy, oh boy, like our guest, Michelle with Hey Beginner Wife, very early on did I recognize I was being disrespectful to my husband, which is his primary way of feeling loved and honored, like I promised I would do on our wedding day. I actually made a vow, like a solemn vow, and I said I would honor him all the days of my life. And so the days that I have failed to honor him, I failed to uphold those vows, and I don't want to do that. And so I love following biblical marriage advice and accounts, but by far my favorite is Michelle's account, Hey Beginner Wife. You can find her on Instagram at Hey Beginner Wife. And before the break, Michelle was kind of breaking down the 5 kind of major key points of advice that she has for beginner wives. Now, you don't have to be newly married to be a beginner wife. You just have to be newly aware that something needs to change, whether that's 5, 10, 15, 20 years into your marriage. So before the break, we were talking about the need for respect and the need for, Michelle, you got to help me out here. I wrote them down, but I have them out of order.
Yeah. So respect, I'm believing the best about him, which would be giving him the benefit of the doubt and being kind, all kind of wrapped up into one. And then being aware that you have inner dialogue, you're constantly talking to yourself about your husband. And you can be constantly accusing him internally or constantly believing the best about him internally, but really considering what your thought life, what's going on in your thought life. And I don't think we're challenged about our thought life very often, not often enough. And so I encourage beginner wives to really be aware that their thought life is going to set them up to succeed or to fail. It's going to contribute to their attitude toward their husband when they see him next and how they're thinking about him during the day.
Yeah, I mean, how could you constantly think in your mind how your husband is forgetful and a failure and then expect when you open your mouth to speak to him that flowers and sunshine is going to come out?
Right.
That's yeah, it's very important. It's very, very important. And like you said earlier, it requires something that is more and more difficult these days with all the temptations that we face, but a lot of self-discipline. We have to be disciplined and be aware of what we're thinking and how that seriously affects the way we treat our spouses who we're meant to honor. Okay, what are your other big pieces of advice? You probably have a cooler name.
So a big piece is to apologize to one another. And if you aren't very good at it, then decide that you're going to practice. I think this is, besides respect, I think respect is huge. I think apologizing is huge. And if you don't know how to apologize, I would take it very seriously and get that figured out immediately, because it's not how our culture tells us to resolve something. We don't even say anything beyond I'm sorry. If we say I'm sorry, what became popular when my kids were in high school was my bad. If they did something wrong, they'd go, oh, my bad, and they would move on. That was an apology. And so we have so many people that were never taught to say, I am so sorry that I did that. I was wrong. And what I love about, so there's three things that I encourage people to incorporate in their apology. One, to say, I am sorry, to express remorse that you did something that was wrong or that hurt someone. And second, to actually admit, I was wrong for accusing you of doing that on purpose. So identifying what you are sorry about. What did you do? Say it. I was wrong to accuse you. Because when you name what you did wrong, the person listening now can relax and know that you understand. They feel seen and heard and loved and valued, because you are actually admitting, you know what, I was wrong to do that. I'm so sorry. And then you wrap it up by saying, would you please forgive me for doing that? That then puts the ball in the other court, and your husband or whoever you're apologizing to now can say, yes, I forgive you. And then it's done. It should be done at that point. You should be able to put it behind you and not bring it up again over and over again. When you really apologize and you're forgiven, you can move on, and it gives you a fresh start. So some people have it's very hard for them to say, I forgive you. That's a concept to them. It's a word they don't use very often. So sometimes I'll just say, well, try saying, rather than saying, would you forgive me? Maybe you want to say, can we put this behind us? You're still putting the ball in your husband's court to say, yes, that's exactly what forgiveness is. It's putting it behind you. So I feel very strongly that we've got to apologize and admit or express forgiveness so we can move on. I think that's huge. I think couples that don't take the time to do that end up stuffing bitterness and becoming resentful because it never gets resolved. They never get to hear, I'm sorry, or they never get to hear, I was wrong. And I'll admit, it was really hard for me to say I was wrong when I was first married, because I tried so hard to do what was right. That when I failed, it was really hard. And my husband was very patient with me and kept encouraging me. It's okay, honey, to say you're wrong. It's okay. And honestly, I needed to hear that because I felt I would be unlovable if I was wrong.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean, Jesus didn't do anything wrong, but we all certainly do.
Yes.
And so, no, that's huge. If you're not raised in an environment where apologies, you don't see parents apologizing to each other, you don't see parents apologizing to children when they've lost their temper, things like that. If it's not modeled, then it can become like pulling teeth. I mean, the words almost get like trapped right in your mouth. And I love what you said. Forgiveness forgiveness is an act of the will, but you have to actively put it behind you and not carry it around all the time. And if you're never apologizing, then imagine this, it's like everything, if you put everything you ate in a trash bag and walked around with it all the time, it's just this dead weight, and it's not good for you. It's not good for your husband. And apologizing is enormous. If you do something wrong, know that you're like everybody else and you're not special. Just say that you're sorry. So we only have a couple minutes left, but do you have one more big piece of advice you wish you could share with all those listening?
I do want to say before we run out of time, I have written a book. I've put everything from Instagram into a book.
Wow.
And that's coming out this fall.
Okay.
So if people are interested in that, it's going to be self-published on Amazon.
Okay.
But I'm going to be announcing it and communicating when it's available on Instagram. So if you're interested in knowing when that comes out, and my best way of communicating right now is through Instagram. I actually would take emails. People could email me at heybeginnerwife@gmail.com if they want to be notified when the book comes out. But I'm going to be covering all these things in this book, and I'm really excited about it. I'm done writing it. It's just in the process of getting published. So,
well, congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
also really excited. And you did it, and you announced it with just a minute here of time left. And so I'll plug it one more time. So for those of you listening, this is Michelle with Hey Beginner Wife, who has written a book compiling all her amazing nuggets of advice that she has on her Instagram. Go follow her. If you follow anybody, if you're strict about who you follow Michelle on Hey Beginner Wife on Instagram and get in touch with her. And I can't wait. I'll definitely plug when her book comes out and remind everybody. I'm super excited to have you on, Michelle. It's been so great chatting with you. I wish we could talk for several more hours because I, of course, have lots and lots of questions. So thank you for being a guest on The Quest, and we appreciate all your advice so much.
You're so welcome. The hour just flew by.
It sure does.
Right?
So as usual, thanks so much for listening, everyone. I'm your Monday, Thursday host of The Quest, Sarah Soto. I'm a Catholic wife, mom, and speaker. You can visit my website at Sarah Soto Speaks for more information. As always, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
Faith, hope, charity. This is the Guadalupe Radio Network. Radio for